Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Know Your Shit podcast, where our knowledge and pride in what we do drives us to be excellent. My name is Josh Cadillac, and once again, you're stuck with me in the driver's seat for today's show as we learn how to stop chasing paychecks and learn how to start doing business the right way, how to start closing customers for life, how to actually know our shit and be good at it. We got a great show for you today because we have a great guest in Mr. Jeremy Joerger. Jeremy, thank you so much for being with us.
Hey, thanks, man, and congratulations on saying my name right. That's pretty good. I can't say anything when I'm sober, so good on you.
There you go.
Thank God I'm sober all the time now, but back in the day, that was rarely the case.
It was more of a challenge in the past.
Especially after the public bankruptcy, you know, I was very rarely sober for quite some time after that. But yeah,
that is a thing. So, Jeremy, why don't you tell everybody, rather than jumping in the middle of the story, what is it that you do?
Oh well, right now, what do I do?
Yes, sir.
Outside of jumping out of airplanes and lifting weights.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Okay, well, let's see. So I'm just starting a digital marketing agency. Been getting that going for the last several months. We'll be live in 2 weeks. So this one's going to be focused exclusive on dentists and cosmetic surgeons. And I kind of fell into that niche, more so the dental route. After I came back from film school when I was 40, you know, I filmed a production company, came back and started doing corporate work. Not much film work here in Florida. So our film industry, rather. And started doing the corporate work. And before you know it, I was kind of a go-to guy for these dental commercials. You know, and so me and my small film crew were making these commercials and advertisements, and we were getting hired by marketing agencies. And, you know, I've started several businesses, you know, and so for me doing the work for these guys, you know, not being an entrepreneur, as I'm watching this stuff happen, I'm like, why am I sitting around waiting for the middleman here? You know, like I can start a marketing company. And so that's what I've been doing. I've been putting the pieces together to start a marketing company. Obviously, digital marketing is got a lot of differences from traditional marketing. So I found out, but you know, we're plugging in the holes, you know, as you do, and putting strong pieces together where I have my weaknesses. And in this case, there's many, but I'm used to being the weak link. So that's not really a big deal for me.
That's one of the things I think in business that people have to get their head wrapped around. You're going to be the weak link in some parts of this thing, and you want to be, because if I suck at things and I can bring people in that are good at those things, that means those things can be done well, and I don't have to do them, which is like the greatest thing in the whole wide world.
Well, I think that's the most important. Well, that's one very important part, and I put that in my book, Business Shit. You know, that is a chapter. You know, to stick with your core competencies. You know, would be the professional way to say it. But you know, do what you do best. You know, and bring in people to fill in the gaps if you can. I mean, that's the ideal. You know, obviously, and as you know, I mean, the reality is when you're starting business, number one, unless you're just, you know, a rich kid with mom and dad's money, which happens, and good on them if they're a hard worker. But if that's not the case, you know, you're usually wearing, you know, every hat, you know. And so and then my advice to those people is, because Business Shit was basically giving people advice on, hey, this is what's really going to happen. You know, this is what you read in the books.
It sounds like a textbook. But
I imagine, like, you know, because I grew up, you know, blue collar, and I wrote it for like the kids like me. You know, it's like looking behind the curtain in Oz, you know, and you seeing the wizard back there, you know, giving a peek to it. Exactly. Exactly. But you know, that's part of it though. So is to get out of that, get out of wearing every hat as quickly as you can and as comfortably as you can, as your business will allow it, and you know, start with what's most important, what you hate the most, you know, because one of the things I say is it's like, you know, there are a lot of benefits, as you know, to be an entrepreneur. I mean, there really are. I mean, I make my own hours. I mean, I work 12 fucking hours a day, but you know, 14 hours a day, but I decide when I'm going to work them. You know, I don't got some asshole emailing me.
Those 12 to 14 hours.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. If I want to go at 3 o'clock and walk the dog, I'm going at 3 o'clock to walk. You know, if I'm going to go to the gym at 2, I'm going to the gym at 2. But
absolutely. I mean,
you know, that's
when
right.
You know how we are, Jeremy, it's a little nuts. Like, you know what? I'm not going to work your stinking 8 hours. I'm going to work 12, but I get to pick which 12 I work, I tell you. We're a little nuts.
Yeah, that's right. No, that's right. Well, yeah, I think you got to be nuts. I really do. I think you got to be half fucking insane to do what entrepreneurs do. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
I think so. I mean, but that, you know, going back to what we were talking about, I mean, that's what I tell guys all the time. It's like, get out of wearing every hat, because if you're going to step into a situation and out of the situation you're in, because let's face it, a lot of us, and I had a badass job. I mean, I had a fucking gold badge. I had guys working for me across 5 states out of DC. I mean, I was hot shit, but I hated what I did. And
Yeah.
so the point is why go take that leap of faith, and why go throw yourself into something which is all encompassing, which business is, just to do the shit that you hated that you were doing back in the 9 to 5. So it's like, you have to do it to a point. Obviously, you have to wear all the hats, but it's like, as soon as you can, start pulling back.
How do you get out of that as quick as you can? That makes sense.
Yeah.
And you're kind of talking about, because I know digital marketing is not what the plan was originally. So what got you started? What is every entrepreneur has this broken road story that got them exactly where they are today.
Mm-hmm.
And I know yours has a very interesting beginning. So what got you started to where you are today?
Oh man, geez. It's a 5-hour podcast, right? 6-hour podcast. Let's see. So what, I started with the brewery. I started, my first business was my most successful business, was a brewery. I left the federal government, came down to Florida, started a brewery, with a fucking dream and a notepad, severely undercapitalized. And before I knew it, we were the fastest growing brewery in Florida at one point, and we got statewide distribution in Publix. All 3 sets was, from the Keys all the way up to Tallahassee, the Panhandle. My beers were in, and we got into Kroger as well in Georgia. So we had a lot of success with JDub. So, JDub, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I just didn't know what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And sort of, I'm not really talking into, but a suggestion by my former father-in-law. He said, you ought to look at opening a brewery down here. And I'd been a home brewer for a long time, and I taught him, and I wrote in several business plans, and not business plans yet, but market, feasibility statements, and done a lot of market research. And when I was looking at the scene down here in Florida, this was in 2011, well, just beginning in 2012, when I started doing the market research. Craft beer, I'm from Northern California. So I grew up drinking as much craft beer, as I did, Bud Light, and so I grew up with that stuff, and it was just becoming this big thing on the scene. Craft beer was real sexy around 2012 to about 2018. Craft was super sexy, especially around 2014 to 2016. We had our peak, but this was going on. The wave was sweeping across America, and Florida was one of the last states to become saturated or even inundated with craft breweries. And so me coming from where I'd come from, and I was up in DC, where craft brewing had gotten strong, I started looking at the market down here for craft brewing, and I said, holy shit, like this is wide open. I mean, at the time, Sarasota and Manatee had no breweries at all. I mean, you're talking, several hundred thousands of people without a single craft brewery. I mean, it was there for the taking. And back then, the only real prominent brewery in Florida was Cigar City. There were a couple others who were doing okay, who'd been around for a while, but Cigar City was the king. Anyway, so I came down, I started the brewery, went hard, did the thing, worked my ass off, made much more mistakes, than I think, that are certainly that are known about, but learned the hard way, as we do, jump into the fire. But because it was so successful, and I'll get back to what got me here, but because JDubs was so successful, I was completely immersed in it, and I was throwing all of myself into it. And man, we were just growing like crazy, triple digits. I mean, we're growing triple digit growth year over year, and I learned so many fucking mistakes in that, because I was instant success. So no failures, instant success. My ego was fucking huge. My ego was through the roof, and I didn't even know any better. You know what I mean? I fell into this, looking back, sort of arrogance, and not in a rude way, but it just, when you get success and you haven't had failure yet, it's just, it's really set you up for failure. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
for a bigger failure. Absolutely.
And
you start to listen, you start to believe in yourself too much, which is dangerous too.
Yeah, and with this big personality I have, I was fucking running around in my cow suit and jumping on bars and, just living it up. I mean, I was, it was like Quiet Riot out there, just being a fucking fool in the '80s, and people just ate it up, and so, um, but yeah, so I developed, so we were very successful. The brewery was very successful, but I made I made a classic mistake, and that I left my business model. I left my conservative approach to growth, and I started rolling the dice on growth. And I
Mm.
started making decisions based off of future growth, off triple digit growth,
Oof.
which just fucked me over royally in the end, because we were doing okay. We were doing very well. We were taking off, and just as we were getting profitable, because we had years, and as you grow, you're taking on, volume heals all wounds, right? So
Yep.
economies of scale, we're taking on all this debt as we're continuing to grow, because we see what's going on at the other side of the mountain. Once we get over, hey, once we take off, man, we're gone, as far as the profitability goes. But once as we started to get profitable, and again, like what Amazon wasn't profitable for years. I mean, it just happens. It's, you can be very successful and growing, but still not profitable yet. And that's okay. And that's where we
Right.
were. But I was fucking rolling the dice on this growth, on this crazy growth. And then COVID hit. And then right as we were getting successful, and I mean, profitable, I should say. And that just crushed us. That
Yep.
absolutely, that crushed us. And we closed the brewery. Um, we filed the Chapter 11. At first, it was more of a strategic move. My CFO was pretty savvy. He said, he saw the writing on the wall. He thought we were going to be closed down a long time. And he said, strategically, it might make sense for us to do this, because we were just getting off the runway. We had,
Yep.
and the bills were still coming. No one
Mhm.
was letting up on the bills. We were still paying for all that shit we were buying, and
Yep.
we're buying. And now let me tell you about the market too. So there's three. So I was a distribution brewery. When you have your brewery, you have three areas of revenue. So you have your tap room, and that's within your four walls, which is like a bar, right? So you go into, I'm sure you've gone into breweries, and you go in there and you hang out, and you go and buy the big vats back there. You see those stainless steel things, and then they're pouring the drinks, right? That's coming direct out of the brew house. That's your margins there are silly. That's your
Yep.
most profitable source right there, profitability wise. So it's not your biggest revenue generator.
Right. Because
Now,
it's geographically limited, quantity
correct,
limited, all that stuff. Right.
correct, and
Gotcha.
that's why you see a lot of these guys who are very successful. They have these huge tap rooms, and they're just killing it, because that's your greatest profit center. So COVID hits, that shut down. Boom, our highest profit center is gone. Second highest profit is kegs, right? Draft, the stuff that you see in bars and restaurants. You pour yourself a pint, you come over, and they give you a pint,
Yeah.
right?
Gone because the bars are all closed.
The bars are all closed, and we were closed a little bit longer here in Florida. Turned out being 7.5 months. So okay, that's 2 out of 3 are closed. So people are actually drinking more during COVID, especially me. But people are generally drinking more during COVID. Not my own product. I always switch to the hard shit, man. I graduated, but people were drinking more during COVID. So you think, okay, and craft beer sales were up, right? The problem is craft is such a small percentage of beer compared to the domestic stuff. Domestic makes up 95%, or not domestic and everything else
Yeah.
outside of craft. Craft is 5% of the sales. I mean,
Yeah.
you're talking Sam Adams. You're talking about all these
Right.
ones that you've heard of. It's 5%. So what was happening when people were drinking more is we were getting squeezed out of the trucks. We were getting letters from the distributors saying, "Hey, we're sorry. We're just getting so much volume that we can't really fit your product on all of the trucks all of the time." So our actual sales started going down
Mm.
because the big guys were filling up the trucks and they didn't have room for us. And
Right.
so we were out 2 out of 3, and they were down on the third. And so at that point we filed Chapter 11, and what was going on behind the scenes it was taking a toll on my family. And
Sure.
that's where I made a mistake. And I talk about that in business shit, and it's really pointers, but the business, I made the age old mistake. I partnered with my former father-in-law,
Mm.
and family. And I'm not saying anything about him, and I won't speak to that relationship, but it was, I would tell anyone, don't partner,
With family.
don't, when you're a startup, It can
Yeah.
work. Legacies, it works. They grow up, mom and dad own the shop. They're gonna run the shop. Maybe you have a little sibling rivalry if one guy gets over,
Yeah.
ends
Yeah.
up taking over the other. But startups in particular, or if it's your first or second business, you're new to it. I would say never, ever, ever, ever going with friends, or family. And and there's ways around that I talk about in the book. Like operating agreement. But uh, but it was taking a toll on that, and my marriage was suffering. The stress was getting to me. Um, so really, it was, and then there was the bankruptcy. So we went through the bankruptcy. I was going through the divorce at the same time. Um, and I got wiped out. Between those two things, I had to file my own divorce. So I had personal bankruptcy, professional bankruptcy, and I was going through the divorce all in the middle of a global pandemic.
Yep.
And so it was a lot of fun that time. So I went through a lot, and I used that essentially to sell my shares. I sold my shares from the brewery. Um, and and part of that is we had fired a beer distributor in bankruptcy. In bankruptcy, you can terminate any contract, and the litmus test is if the owner thinks it's good for the company. Well, we did that, and this was a very large distributor, and they filed a damages claim against us, which was
Oof.
astronomical, and they beat the hell out of us, and me in particular, in court. They made an example out of me. And it
Oof.
was like a little pea shooter going up against an Abrams.
Yep.
And they knew what they were doing, and I think it was personal, and that's okay. But they basically, had a hand in me dipping out of the company,
Mm.
so I left the company, and I spent a lot of time, in that apartment, when I was cognizant enough to think about what the hell I was going to do with the rest of my life. And it was a weird time too, because as we were going through the Chapter 11 process, the brewery is still making money. So I'm still able to pay myself a pretty good salary, but it's coming to an end.
Yeah.
I know the end is near. And so, that's what's on the horizon. And so I'm, I, I'm coming to the end of the line, the end of the rope, financially. And I'm going, I'm on I can't tell you what it's like, the feeling when you're watching everything that you've built get destroyed in front of you. There's not a single thing you can do about it. And people are coming in and fighting right in front of you over the scraps.
Yep.
And it's like, it is the worst feeling and experience in the world. And there's more to it, obviously, with bankruptcy that's dubious, but I took all these personality tests, what are you supposed to do? And, what's your personality good for, and it was film, it was go back to film, get into some sort of entertainment. I went to film school. I went out to Nashville. And when I did that, I really used that as an opportunity to sort of unplug. And I, I sort of, I kind of hid from who I was. I hid from the public spotlight for sure. We had so much media, JDubs did in its heyday. Like I was on HGTV, did an inspirational show about me moving down to start the brewery. And, I was on the cover of magazines, and I was in the news so much that I honestly didn't know when I was going to be in the news half the time. People would tell me, "Hey, I saw you on so-and-so," and I wasn't even being aloof. I'd be like, "Oh, really? I was in that. Okay, wow, that's cool. Okay, what was it like? How did I look? What was I doing?" And I mean, it was that often. It was that commonplace that I was in the media, and that takes its toll too. And I'm no celebrity, but it's like you got to be on 24/7. When
Yep.
you're a known person and you're a hometown hero. And it's like you can't give somebody the bird in traffic, without it being, oh, hey, that's JDub. JDub gave me the bird. Next thing you know, it's on the internet or something. But that had taken its toll on me. And so when I left to go to film school, I changed my phone number, and I completely unplugged from the public eye. And I didn't talk to hardly anyone unless they were directly affiliated, associated with my kids. I didn't talk to anyone, for a couple years. Um, Certainly when I was out in film school, and I lost some friends because of it, but I just needed to unplug,
Yep.
so I got my film degree, started my film production company. I came back. I found a job helping someone start their online digital presence, their digital media presence for their company, and we did that. And then I started the production company, and I started doing commercials. And before I know it, I'm the go-to guy doing the dental commercials, the dentist commercials. And so, yeah, I was doing that. And, as I'm doing these commercials, I'm getting employed by marketing agencies. And so I'm seeing what these marketing agencies are doing. And without, not being disrespectful towards them, with my background, I'm like, there's no reason why I should be waiting for these guys to give me jobs, as in production. I can start my own marketing company.
Right.
So for about the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 months, that's what I've been doing is getting this thing off the ground. So, and then there were businesses in between there too. I mean, shortly thereafter, after JDub's, we started a non-alcoholic brewery, and that was very short lived. But the problem with that one was the manufacturer where we were going to manufacture the beer fell through. And so, and my business partners didn't want to pursue other manufacturers. I could have pushed it, but I was so battle fatigued at that point with going through a shitty relationship with business partners that I just said, fine, let's just walk away. I didn't have the energy to get into another fight, to have another fallout. And so I walked away from that. And so, yeah, it's been, and now I'm getting the digital media, digital marketing company started. So, as we were saying before the call, it's different than traditional marketing. There's
Sure.
nuances that are completely specific to digital. SEO isn't a term you hear in traditional marketing. Things like that. But it's fun and it's a challenge. And
Sure.
this is one thing for me of many. And again, I don't want to give it discredit because I'm building this. With the idea of anything that I do, you got to have a quality product.
Of course.
And so I'm trying to make this different than anything that's out there. And I'm gonna do this in a way that's different than I think most people are doing it, if not anyone. And we have a plan for that, how we're going to go to market. And whereas I'm not just focused on digital marketing. I've grown a business, I've grown a brand. Branding is a strength of mine, and I'm going to be helping these dentists and cosmetic surgeons grow their business outside of just traditional digital marketing. So
Sure.
it's digital marketing, and then we're also going to be helping them look at other ways to grow their business. One of them is through branding, and creating a brand. Because I think a lot of these these dentists and cosmetic surgeons, and speaking to the dentists, it's like they go in and they do their job, they're great at their job, and they punch out. But when you realize that you're going to be there, these people are going to be there their entire lives. They're going to be
Yeah.
in that local community their entire lives. These folks are in the community. They're part of the community. And
And
therefore,
how to establish that a little bit, how to
that's
take
right.
it
That's right. You're
step
public. That's right. You're
basically separate yourself and become part of the public psyche of like, hey, this is our dentist. This is the person. This is our local neighborhood person, as opposed to this is just another source of these services, kind of thing.
That's right. And I think, there are people who are doing that in the industry, because, I found that in the research that I've done. There are folks who are doing that, but they're doing out of their own innate understanding or their own innate being, and they're creating these things
Right.
and really integrate themselves into the community. And so it's teaching these folks that, hey, you're a brand.
Right. How to
You know,
how to
eh,
take
that's
break that
right.
in.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's right.
They're good at teeth. That again,
Yeah.
it's one of those things they need to be able to delegate that to somebody else, and this is your superpower. And I suppose that's got to be kind of the answer to the next question that I had, Jeremy, which is, what do you think in your makeup makes you good at what you've done? I mean, you've done a lot of things. You've seen great success. You've seen great failure. Now you're doing one of my favorite poems. I've said it on here before several times. Is a poem, "If," by Rudyard Kipling. If you've never read it, I think, considering the conversation we've had to this
Yeah.
point, you'd appreciate it. Um, Talks about seeing everything that you built be torn down by knaves and fools, and stooping up and picking and building them back up again with worn out tools.
Yeah.
Um, the idea of what it takes to be a good man. That whole poem is written to Rudyard Kipling's son, saying, "If you can do these things, this will make you into a good man." And there's some great lines in there. But
Well,
as
I
I'm
think,
listening,
yeah.
as I'm listening to your story, that's what I'm hearing. You've taken the blows, and now you're bending down and building back up again. You're not
Yeah,
letting it sit back.
well, that's exactly right. And that's a message that's in, it's loud and clear. And there were so many, as we were talking about earlier, there's so many more lessons in failure than there is in success.
Yeah,
And success really does. There's 10 great terms at least for success, and that it just tricks you. It sets you up for failure because it is so fickle,
it is.
right.
It doesn't teach you anything. I don't think you'll learn a lot. I mean, you learn some stuff from success, but you really learn more from failure, and it sucks because when you learn stuff, then you're a better version of yourself. But learning stuff through failure sucks because failure sucks in general.
Mm-hmm.
And so succeeding is awesome, but you don't actually wind up being a much better person from winning. Winning doesn't really make you into much better than what you were. You just tend to find out a lot of times your own character flaws come to the surface when you have that benefit.
I say business brings out the best in people and the worst in people, and I'm no exception. There are a lot of instances I wish I could take back, and there are a lot of things I'm really proud of. But you're absolutely right. And speaking on that, it was such a profound part of my experience is that, when the business failed, first of all, and a lesson to other entrepreneurs that I talk about in the book is that you have to understand that you're not your brand. And because for me, I mean, my nickname is JDub, right? And so my fucking name, that's right. And I put my heart and soul, and that's when I talk about branding, and I know this kind of touches on your question. When I talk about branding, well, first we talk about it's authentic, right? That's the most important piece. It's got to come from who you really are, and it doesn't need to be all of who you are. It can be a part of who you are, but when it comes to branding, and that was the JDub thing, is that I took a part of me and I applied it specifically to that brand. And I think that's why entrepreneurs need to safeguard what's in that brand and what stays in that brand, because it came from you, and what belongs in it, and what doesn't. And I'll take a very obvious point of that is like when I owned JDub's Brewing Company in our tap room, which is like a bar. It was the vibe was kind of like 90s ska, Sublime, little hip hop, some reggae. It was that laid back sort of 90s beach, weed smoking kid on a skateboard type vibe, and that was a part that came from me. So I knew what stayed in there, but when I created JDubs, it was such an escape from what I was coming from as a federal agent. In some circles, and my friends knew better, but in some circles in the federal government, I was known as a quiet guy. And I am far from fucking quiet. There's not much quiet about me, and I did that out of self-protection, to be honest.
Sure.
But when I threw myself into the brand and created JDubs, I put all of myself into that brand. And so when I was, and going back to that success story and how it's fickle and it just sets you up for failure, is that I was like, holy shit, I'm successful. Look at me. I'm the one, JDubs, I was JDub. JDubs was successful. I walked in with my chest out and people knew who I was, and the rich guys at the country club wanted to hang out with me and invite me to, go golfing with them. And I had never used to that shit, as I said in the book, I was invited on jets and, introduced this lifestyle, but, yeah, I don't know where the hell I was going with all that. I had a great point to make, but I just lost it. I think my dog's nibbling on my sock right now.
It's all good, man, because it's bringing me to the next point, which is the point that I think that you've gotten a master class in at this point, which is how do you manage yourself when it comes to the disappointments, the setbacks? Yeah. How do you keep yourself in there? And I mean, I'm sure you found some unhealthy ways to do it at this point.
No, you're right.
How do you do it in a way that brings you through the fire a better version, a fire honed, reinforced version of the person you were? What do you do now?
What do I do?
Yeah. How do you manage yourself?
How do I manage myself? Well, I'm a workaholic. That's part of it.
How do you handle disappointment more so than anything? Because I mean, if there's one thing that as an entrepreneur that we're all going to get, we're all going to get disappointed at some point.
Yeah. And that's where, where I was going towards earlier is that what happened to me was I tried to be a quote unquote normal guy. After that,
Mm-hmm.
I tried to step back away from being an entrepreneur, from being this big, loud, gregarious personality, and someone who drew it, who just naturally the spotlight sort of finds me. I was born that way, and
Yep.
I tried to go to just get out of that, not be an entrepreneur, not be. And what I realized is at a certain point, I woke up and I said, "Wait a second, I'm Jeremy fucking Joerger. I'm a bad motherfucker. There's no reason that I should be sitting here fucking licking my wounds, trying to
Yep.
be something I'm not." And it's like, and I had good friends around me, some who really lifted me up in that respect. One is an entrepreneur who's been far more successful than I have. But I think it's just it's you find yourself, and for me, it's after I've been through that, there's nothing that can take me down. I mean, there's absolutely nothing. There's nothing in this world that can stop me from anything it is that I want to do. And I had to go through the eye of the needle for that. And I have changed fundamentally since that as well. I mean, I am laser focused now in my work and in my work ethic and my discipline, but I am pretty chill, socially. And
Mm-hmm.
before, man, I wouldn't say road rage because I wouldn't get that far, but I get pissed off in the traffic and little things that piss me off. Someone cutting in line, and these things would piss me off. And it's like I don't sweat the small stuff anymore. And one of the things that I held on to during that time, and I was suicidal. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not gonna hide from it. I was.
No,
I
I can.
called
I
it.
can.
I called the national crisis line. That we have for veterans. And I mean, it was horrible, but
No, I mean it's when especially when you have something like that, a brand that's so directly related to you, it feels like almost a repudiation of you. That's, I mean, yeah, man. I mean, there's a lot, and the marriage and all that other stuff all at the same time.
and
You get hit in the ankle.
yeah, and and what also too, what I struggled with is that being in the front, and this, I know this personally. I know you know this through any guests or anything that you've listened to about success that you've experienced yourself. Something that just comes along with success as part of the human condition is haters. And I
Sure.
deal with that in the book. The chapter is haters are going to hate. And it's like, and I quote David Goggins at the beginning, and it's like, as he talks about that so eloquently. As
Yeah, such an
and
eloquent.
yes, yes, yes,
Not the word that you
loquacious.
typically,
Yeah,
yes,
the loquacious type.
not the word you typically use
Yeah,
to
yes,
describe it. Yes, no, he in a very eloquent way actually does do exactly that.
yeah. So it's you, you know the haters bothered me. They really did. When I was starting the brewery and I was starting out, the haters, I will admit, got under my skin.
Mm.
And because I am the kind of guy, I think my whole life I wanted people to like me. And as when you take the lead in particular, when you're at the front, you got the biggest target on your back.
Always.
And and the worst part, not the worst part, because there were so many fucking worst parts about that period of my life. But one part was that ate me up. I felt like the haters were getting vindication, and
Yeah.
I felt like they won.
Ah.
And that was the hardest part for that made me drink over.
It wasn't that they beat the shit out of you. It's that they stopped to urinate on you while you were laying on the ground. Yeah, no,
And
I get you.
and
It's
I just
the, it's that,
I imagine these little fucking trolls dancing around their little
I know.
fire, holding their little goblets. He failed, and
Yeah.
with their little frothy mugs, dancing over my carcass,
Yep.
But that was a hard one. Was feeling like the haters won, and
Yeah. No,
so
that's 100% within. Sadly, it's 100% within our mental control, but it's not. Like they shouldn't even work their way in, and yet we let them. We give them that real estate in our mind, and
yeah,
that's a brutal thing because they shouldn't matter. They shouldn't matter. They don't matter to my overall existence, but we let them. And I'm saying this as we because I know exactly what you're talking about. I mean, there's one lady in Kansas right now. She's got a problem with me. I have no idea why. And every once in a while, I'm sitting there going, what is her problem? I mean, she literally caused problems for me. I never did anything to this lady. Like, I don't know what her problem is.
And
And
that's in that chapter I talk about that. And it's like my father, Mark Joerger, the nicest guy. I swear to God, he's the nicest guy you'll ever meet. And I remember to this day, there was a guy that worked with him, and my dad always extended the olive branch to him. My dad grew up doing MMA. We had an Olympic-sized boxing ring in my house growing up. So my dad was very much a guy's guy, but he would invite guys over from work to watch boxing matches. And these were the 90s, so there was a lot of good boxing matches on back then. And there was this one guy in particular that would come, and my dad would still invite him, but the guy hated my dad. And that lesson taught me, from a very young age, because I knew my dad was such a nice guy, and he truly is. I mean, we're friends, and it's like, no matter who you are, someone's not going to like you, and that's at the surface level, but it's like, and then when it comes to business or leadership, or when it comes to being exceptional in something, or when you're winning, that's when you've got that target on your back. And that's just, unfortunately, you're going to have these people who hate on you. And it's like, hey, you've got to come up, let that roll off your shoulders, or even better, let that be your fucking motivation. It's like, okay, yeah, you're hating on me. Good. I remember you, got you. And it's like, some people deal with that differently. Some people will let it roll off their shoulders. Some people will not even pay attention to it. Some people will practice forgiveness, what have you. But I'm a little different, and I don't know if it's a character defect, but every son of a bitch that ever hated on me just becomes a fuel source for me. And it's like, hey, you hated on me. I got you. I remember who you are. Understood. Because when I'm back, and I will be, I'm going to remember you. And don't you ever come ask me for anything, and if you ever see me, I might never say anything to you, but I'm going to look at you, and we're both going to know that you're a little troll and a weasel, and I won. And that's what you are. You're always going to be a little troll and a weasel, and you're going to be sitting back there talking shit about the person who had the nuts to get up and actually go inside the arena, or had the intestinal fortitude to step inside the arena, and
intestinal fortitude. I've switched to testicular fortitude, having the ball.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, it's so it can be anyone, but and that's it. And then the other part of it is this, and then I've really taken this on lately. It's not just, it's not just learning through it through failure. It's when you sign up for an entrepreneur, and you know this as good as I do, and any entrepreneur understands this. When we sign up for this, that failure can happen.
Oh yeah.
And right. And sometimes failure can be a fucking luck of the draw. Success or loss can be simply a flippant decision somewhere that maybe you didn't even know how to direct effect on you. And that changed the trajectory of you failing or succeeding. And it can actually be something like that. Right.
Yeah. Or it's not even a decision that you make, something completely outside of your control that takes, everything that you were banking upon and turns it into a pot. I mean, COVID being a great example of that.
Yeah.
None of us sat there and said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to go have this disease. That's nobody made that choice.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, look, I got wiped out in 2008 with all the
a lot of people did. Yeah.
And I was, position wise, I was positioned in a place that everybody would have said was not over leveraged or anything like that. So I know exactly what you're talking about. Sometimes things bigger than you and outside your control cause it, but you're still left to deal with the consequences.
And that's right. And I've even taken a different approach to that, because it's like, I'm fucking proud of the fact that I got wiped out. And I mean, I don't want to say proud, but I'm glad. I don't want to say I'm glad. What's the word for it? It's like, I fucking signed up for this and I lived it. I did it. Yep. I said I would pay the sacrifice, and I paid the sacrifice, so it's not a hypothetical for me, and I would have, I would have never known otherwise if I had, and none of us do, man. And, it's like, you don't, until you experience failure on a large scale, you have no idea how it's going to affect you. And it's easy to stay down, man. It's so easy to stay down.
Absolutely. If you let yourself, if you give yourself that choice, I know people that listen to the show are sick of hearing it, but that movie Rocky Balboa talking about nothing hitting harder than life. What are you going to do when life hits you? Nothing's going to hit as hard as life, but it's not how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward, how much you can take and keep moving forward is the line from the movie. And it's very much true. Can you keep, when I used to play football, they would tell me, no matter what happens, you keep your feet moving toward the goal line. You get hit, you keep your feet moving. You hold on to the ball, you keep your feet moving to the goal line, always.
Yeah.
Keep your shoulders square, keep your feet moving toward the goal line. That's just, you get that beat into your head enough, because if you give yourself the choice, I was just flying back from Europe yesterday. And so I was going through and editing one of the chapters of this anthology that we're writing. And the one gentleman's chapter that he sent talked about having 1 foot in and 1 foot out. So many people go into business with 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And you give yourself the option. If you have 1 foot in and 1 foot out, it's a very easy shift to pull that 1 foot out. And he said, I never gave myself the choice. I went in with both feet, and there was I might have thought about taking on a second job. I might have thought about doing a million other things. But the one thing I never gave myself the choice of was not letting this thing succeed. There was no way this was not going to get everything that I had.
That's right. You're right.
I think that's not one of the biggest things that I've learned through this process, and I'd love to hear your take on it, is I can't trust myself with options.
Why is that?
Because if I give myself options, I'll take options that I otherwise shouldn't. If I give myself the option to quit, I will before I should. If I give myself the option to take and blame myself for stuff that's outside my control, I will. I know that I have character flaws, like you just talked about earlier, putting people in places to make up for where you're weak. I have to take and mentally manage what I give myself, because I know that I have these inherent weaknesses. One of my jobs as the CEO of my operation is to manage the staff, and I'm one of the key members of the staff. What can I and not what can I not trust myself with, as far as options, opportunities, whatever. If I give myself certain opportunities, Jeremy, I'm not going to lie, brother, if I buy the package of double stuffed Oreos on Monday, that package is not making it till Friday on cheat day. Like, I know this about, I know the character flaw.
I know.
Like,
I know. I'm saying
I don't buy the Oreos, right? And that's a simple, silly version of that.
Yeah.
But,
and I think that's another point too. And I think you develop that is, to your point, an extension of that is, it's like knowing when to say no.
Yep.
And for me, it's like, you know how it is. It's like, as an entrepreneur, we're addicted to when we see opportunity, when we see potential in something that can be successful. I think we're inherently attracted to that. I am, as an entrepreneur, and you go, oh wow, like this, and you start seeing it down the road, and then it's like, well, wait a second, what am I doing right now?
It is the equivalent of the little red dress and red lipstick. Yeah, no, I'm just like, hello.
Yeah,
no, and it breaks our heart. Like when we see an opportunity, we know it's a good thing, and for some reason we don't have the money, or we don't have the ability to take it. Like it hurts. Like I could see the handwriting on the wall. That's where that's the move, and now I can't take advantage of it. Yeah.
No, and I think, and that's another part too. I mean, going back to those lessons that I learned with the breweries, with the breweries failures, that, I'm a big Napoleon Hill guy, as I'm guessing you might be, or if, yeah. And so I believed very much to my core that if I set sail into the unknown and burned and got onto the shores, and I burned the ships behind me and had no option to fail, and I just hung on no matter what, that I was guaranteed success. No. And I believed that. And I'd read that, and that was my interpretation of Think and Grow Rich. Was, it's like, hey, if you are fully committed and you are willing to pay the sacrifice, and there's a story in that book about the guy that, had this mine, this gold, it was a diamond mine, and he's digging and digging and digging and digging and digging, and he can't find any diamonds, and he finally stops and he sells this thing for next to nothing, and the guy he sells this to goes 1 foot further than he stopped, and he strikes rich, and he finds all these diamonds. And it's like, and so I always felt like, hey, if I just keep going, if I just keep pushing myself, come hell or high water, so I am guaranteed by the universe success. And when that didn't happen, that was also, I was almost like angry at the universe. I was angry at the business gods. I was angry at Napoleon Hill, because I was like, I did what you told me to do. Like I put it all on the line. I had nothing left. I lost everything, houses, everything, and that was hard. That was a hard part as well.
Absolutely, because they act like that's the only piece of the equation is just that the mindset, and there's not a whole lot of other things that go into making that the case. There's a whole lot of other things that you have to be doing right to make that work, and not just it's not just think. Getting your mind right is a huge part of it, but there's all the mistakes that, in hindsight, in retrospect, that we see that we made along the way. That those things have to be a little bit more right as well. It's there's a lot of things that have to come together to make it actually work.
Yeah.
Work well. And unfortunately, a lot of times we have to learn those lessons the hard way. My father always told me there's two types of people, son. Those that can learn from the mistakes of other people, and those that have to make the mistakes themselves. And no, and like on the other side of it, you look back and say, yeah, that's me. But when you're going through it, it sucks donkey nuts. I mean, it's no fun whatsoever. That being said, Jeremy, I know we could keep going here, but I want to give everybody a chance to know you a little better, because I want them, obviously, I think that your book sounds like an amazing resource for people. So I want them to understand the guy who wrote it a little better. So this is kind of a little bit of a lightning roundish kind of thing, if you will. So just your first sort of take on this. What would you say you're most proud of in business that you've done at this point?
Building a brand.
All right. Similar question, but a little bit more personal. What would you say you're most proud of in life?
That's easy, my kids. You can't ask a dad that question. That's an easy one.
Always glad to hear that.
Yeah. I got kids. It's my children, 100%.
Good stuff. Best thing you did, man, and that's the biggest thing you could do in life. What one piece of advice would you give our listeners?
Are these people deciding whether or not they're going to go into business, or these entrepreneurs already?
These are folks for large in real estate, which means that they're functioning basically as their own boss in their own real estate company. Yeah,
well, I guess speaking because I can't speak to real estate, although I predicted this thing that's going on in Florida when this last hurricane went through. I had a feeling these prices were going to start going down. People are going to get afraid of these hurricanes. But anyways, not being able to speak to real estate because it's not my niche, but I would say in any endeavor, you need to have a really firm sense of yourself, and you need to pay attention to what's going on inside of you. And what I mean by that is, like in business shit, the book is I talk about knowing when to tap out. And that's something I don't think that's really talked about. And I tried to write the book in a sense to where I wanted to give people both. I wanted to show people what you're in for, but also too, at any point, if you step away from this, that's okay. And I think a point that I could easily see a real estate professional doing it, because I could see you working for all sorts of obvious reasons 24 hours a day. Yep. I could see it, the research, alone, but I could see it. So you need to pay attention to your priorities. You need to make time for your family or for those who are important to you. No matter what, you need to carve out that time. And if you start to feel yourself get burnt out, you got to pay attention to that. And because that is real, that is real. And people will say, fuck that. And I was that guy. Fuck burnout. It's just fuel for it. But no, because it's real, and it will have long-term effects on you, health effects. I was up to 270 pounds when I went JDubs. I'm about 2'5", 210, and I'm a little overweight right now for me. But I was up to 270 pounds, and that was stress and beer, man. And so I would say to anyone, if understand who you are and know who you are internally, and keep your priorities straight. And if at any point that you feel like you might need to make a move, obviously don't make a rash move, but you need to dive into that a little bit and think about it. And again, I don't want to sound like I'm telling people to take one foot out. I'm certainly not saying that, but I think, and I again, going back to the book, I talked about this in the Army or in the military. All of us have an expiration date, and so like for me, and what I mean by that is like we're all just done at a certain point. And there's nothing against that. For some guys, it's 3 years. For some guys, it's 5. For some, it's 10. Some people want to serve a whole career, but we all have an expiration date to where it's like, hey, it's time to hang it up. I'm done. Yep. And it's subjective, and when that time is, know. And it's like for me, when I left, I was the only. First of all, I never wore a uniform. I was working with civilians and senior officers. I was the only enlisted guy in my office. I was extremely specialized. So for me to stay in, if I would have stayed in, I would have I mean, I had the brigade commander telling me he's going to send me wherever I want to go. I'll become an officer, and a shit ton of money. Well, relative to what for Army
Yeah, yeah,
standards, bunch of
yeah.
money to throw at me. But the bottom line was I was just done.
Yep.
And it's like you got to acknowledge that, because what's the point of being rich and miserable?
No,
You know,
I totally agree. And I think what you're saying is, I love what you're saying, because as much as I enjoyed reading his take on that, of not giving yourself the option to leave, there is nuance to that as well, right? You shouldn't be pursuing that which is not worth pursuing. Once you realize that that's not where you should be, I think the question is always, back to that idea of options. Can I trust myself in my darkest moments to make the right call, a neutral right call in that situation? You know what I'm saying? That's kind of the tough piece of this, right? If I give myself the option to get out, well, when things are really bad, I might bail just because, well, right now I'm not in the right headspace to be making that kind of determination, and the only way maybe to take him.
and that
And I said,
self-awareness. Yeah, that
yeah,
self-awareness is important, right? Am I doing
that's what
this because of the situation, or am I doing this because I'm really just feeling done? And I think
absolutely.
if you have the self-awareness, I think you can know, you can be at least be aware enough, to actually to make that determination, and look within yourself. And especially if you're fortunate enough to have a spouse, a significant other, a spouse with you who understands you and knows you, because they're part of this thing as well.
Yeah,
When you
yeah.
jump in, they're living it. It may not be exactly what you may not see each other all day long, but they're living it in their own way.
And they're dealing with you, who's living it,
Right.
which is
Right.
their own penance to bear. Similar question. This is a tough question for some. Some this is a pretty easy one. If you had to recommend, and it's just one, if you could recommend one book, what would it be?
Think and Grow Rich.
Good stuff. Favorite movie of all time?
Godfather. It's too.
Great, great film. Famous person in history you'd want to meet if you could?
He's probably alive right now. Arnold Schwarzenegger.
A very interesting guy, isn't he?
Oh
A
yeah. Talk about manifesting your destiny.
little bit. Yeah, man. He's a very interesting guy. Person from your past you'd want to sit down with and have lunch with today if you could?
Yeah, I heard you ask that one before. Person from my past. Well, I don't know. There's one guy I'd want back. I wouldn't. It wouldn't be more than a lunch. So let me think. Who would I want back? To someone to have lunch with? I made my great grandmother. I quoted her. She was a poet and a
Hmm.
musician, and she wrote this poem. And I'll be tacky and recite the poem for you. You ready?
Go ahead.
And this is I might be chapter 1, but I grew up with this poem next to my sink, and so I remembered it, and I think it left an impression on me. And the poem is called "Dare to Be Great," and it's by Beth Milliken Joerger, who was my great grandmother on my dad's side. But it's dare to be dare to be Drake. I did that too. Dare to be
Yeah.
great. Think big, not small. He who thinks big and mind grows tall. Like rockets and cosmos, be confident and strong. Aim for the moon with heart full of song. Dare to be great, but pray to be good, and clasp man's hand in brotherhood. And
Good
that's
stuff.
and so the dare to be great, dare to live the life you love, dare to be great. That's something I've tried to embody my whole life. When other people have, called me crazy, leaving being a soldier to being a Fed to being an entrepreneur, just doing one thing after the next.
All right. So you've done a lot of different things. You've got some really more perspective than most people do. One piece of advice would you like to go back and give a younger version of you, Jeremy?
Ooh. I'm not gonna say that one. Let's see.
I hear you.
She's a married woman. We'll just put it that way. Let's see. One piece of advice I would give myself: don't drink.
All right.
I hate to say that, but that was it. If I that's been my Achilles heel. That was my demon for sure.
Yeah. If you had to be stuck in a foxhole, who would you choose to have in there with you?
I'm a soldier, you know. Yeah,
I know. I feel like you'd be,
oh, yeah, stuck in a foxhole. Who would I choose to be with me? Probably Matt LeBlanc. He was my first. He was a butter bar. This is a true story. Matt LeBlanc. He was a butter bar. That's the first rank you get when you're an officer. I was a non-commissioned officer, and I was very hard charging. And we used to just, the young officers, they're officers, so you're supposed to respect them. But the non-commissioned officers will just eat their lunch, and especially like when you were of my caliber. I mean, they just they gave them to me as like sacrificial lambs. I would just tear these guys, these poor kids, and I would just tear them up, But Matt came in, and of course, back then we weren't on first name basis, but I see this big, tall, I think goofy looking guy, and he goes, I said, hey, I'm running about 13 flat, 2 miles, which isn't that fast, but it's pretty good. And I'm running, 2 miles in 13 minutes. And I said, hey, Lieutenant, how's it going? He's like, hey, Corporal. I said, why don't we go out for a run sometime? How does that sound? He's like, well, sure. And we end up going for a run, and this guy's a fucking gazelle, man. He just ran me into the ground. And then, oh my God, this guy and he was huge. And so it turns out Matt was a wrestler in college, a heavyweight wrestler. And he only lost to one guy twice. You know who that guy was?
No.
Brock Lesnar. By points. He lost by points. He didn't even pin him. He said Brock Lesnar was so big. He said when he was jumping rope before he wrestled with him, he had this his neck was so big underneath the sweater that was like the cut open sweater, that you wear in high school and stuff. And he thought it was he had one of those towels underneath his shirt, like under he had a towel wrapped around, and he takes it off and it's all traps. And he's like, oh boy. But yeah, Brock Lesnar was the only guy he had ever lost to. But I would say Matt, me and him, I've got it sitting around here during all that stuff when it went down. He sent me a letter. He was a battalion commander at the time, and he sent me a letter of encouragement that I still have sitting on my desk. But he sent me one, and we had a real special connection. He claims that I helped him as an officer, and he was a very good officer for me as an NCO. So I think Matt, he was the kind of guy. He's also the kind of guy if Gentle Giant, if you were in an alley, he'd be the guy you'd want there with you.
Yeah.
He never act like it. He'd never act like it, but he enjoys punishing people a little bit. We used to try to wrestle him. We get deployed, and he just tap us all out one by one. And finally, after he went through his second round of the platoon, tapping us out one by one, a guy finally got to him, and that dude lost it. And I mean, about 12 of us soldiers just beat feet as fast as we could outside of that tent running. He's seeing red, and he's coming. But yeah, Matt is one tough SOB, man. So I'd say Matt LeBlanc would probably be my guy, me and him, because we just.
Well, Jeremy, that's awesome, man. The last question I have for you is, where can people find you? They want to find out more about the book, more about you, more about.
Well, yeah, it's jeremyjoerger.com. Is my website. So I do I consult. I consult for businesses as well, with branding in particular. But jeremyjoerger.com is where you can find what I'm doing. And Lux Media is what I'm focusing all my time on right now until we get up and running. But jeremyjoerger.com, and the book Business Shit is on Amazon. Again, it's just a good, fun, raw, colloquial read. Not traditional, a behind the curtains type read for blue collar guys that aren't used to being in the circles I found myself with success. So yeah.
Good stuff. Well, Jeremy, thanks for hanging out with us, man. It was great talking to you, getting a chance to go over kind of what your journey was, but thank you.
Hey, thanks so much, man. It's been a good time.
Yeah. And I want to thank our listeners, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with us, hearing the stories. We have to understand the full scope of what goes in. And winning and losing both teach you so much. But the one thing that there's never an excuse not to know. There's never an excuse not to know your shit. Till next time.